It was a gloomy Friday evening when Jonathan, a middle-aged man with a penchant for collecting vintage dolls, stumbled upon a peculiar listing on Craigslist. The ad promised an exquisite porcelain doll collection, one that Jonathan had been tirelessly searching for over the years. The seller, known only as Mr. Blackwood, claimed to have an assortment of dolls that were the epitome of artistry and elegance. Intrigued by the prospect of finally finding the missing pieces of his prized collection, Jonathan contacted Mr. Blackwood to set up a meeting. They agreed to meet at an abandoned Victorian house located on the outskirts of town, a setting that already cast a shadow of foreboding over the encounter. As dusk settled and an eerie mist began to seep through the desolate streets, Jonathan arrived at the decrepit house. The Victorian mansion stood like a forgotten relic, its once grand architecture marred by years of neglect. The creaking gate and overgrown garden added an air of desolation to the already unsettling scene. Hesitant but determined, Jonathan pushed open the squealing front door and entered the dimly lit interior. The musty scent of decay assaulted his senses, and a shiver raced down his spine. The flickering candlelight cast long, dancing shadows along the cracked walls, creating an otherworldly atmosphere that whispered of hidden horrors. "Hello?" Jonathan's voice quivered, echoing through the empty corridors. Silence was his only reply, and he pressed on, following the flickering light that led him deeper into the abyss. Finally, in a room cloaked in darkness, Jonathan spotted a silhouette. It was Mr. Blackwood, a tall, gaunt figure with hollow eyes and a sinister smile. His appearance alone sent a chill down Jonathan's spine, but he pushed his unease aside, attributing it to his overactive imagination. "Welcome, Jonathan," Mr. Blackwood hissed, his voice filled with a macabre delight. "I've been expecting you." The room came to life as Mr. Blackwood lit the room's candles. Jonathan's gaze fell upon the countless porcelain dolls that adorned the shelves. Their glassy eyes seemed to follow his every move, their painted lips twisted into unnatural smiles. Yet despite their unsettling presence, Jonathan couldn't tear his eyes away. He was captivated by their haunting beauty. As the transaction commenced, an unexplainable feeling of dread began to wash over Jonathan. The air grew thick, suffocating his every breath. With each passing second, his gut instinct screamed at him to flee, but his curiosity held him captive. With trembling hands, Jonathan handed over the money, hoping to conclude the transaction and escape this house of nightmares. But just as he thought he could escape, a glint of steel caught his eye, a gleaming butcher's knife in Mr. Blackwood's hand. A chilling grin spread across Mr. Blackwood's face as he lunged forward, the blade glinting in the candlelight. Panic consumed Jonathan, and a fight for survival ignited within him. He dodged the lethal strikes, desperately attempting to fend off his deranged assailant. A harrowing battle ensued, their struggles reverberating through the empty halls of the house. The porcelain dolls stood as silent witnesses, their blank eyes reflecting the horrors unfolding before them. In a moment of desperation, Jonathan managed to wrestle the knife from Mr. Blackwood's grasp. The tables had turned, and now it was Mr. Blackwood who found himself cornered. Fear etched deep into his eyes as he stumbled backward, his malevolent smile replaced by a mask of terror. You don't understand," Mr. Blackwood stammered, his voice quivering. "They made me do it. The dolls. They demanded sacrifices." Jonathan's heart pounded in his chest, his mind reeling from the revelation. Was this madness, or was there something far more sinister lurking behind the porcelain facade? In a daring move, Jonathan approached Mr. Blackwood, his grip on the knife tightening. His voice quivered with a mix of trepidation and determination. Tell me everything. What drove you to this madness?" With a mixture of relief and remorse, Mr. Blackwood began to recount his chilling tale. He spoke of an ancient curse that had befallen his family, one that had been passed down through generations. The curse bound them to these sinister dolls, their porcelain bodies housing vengeful spirits. Mr. Blackwood's ancestors had made a pact with dark forces, seeking wealth and power. In return, they had to offer up human lives as sacrifices to the dolls. Over time, the curse consumed them, twisting their minds until they became mere vessels for the dolls' insatiable thirst for blood. As the story unfolded, Jonathan's disbelief battled with a gnawing sense of dread. He had unwittingly stumbled upon a dark and unholy tradition, a legacy of bloodshed that had permeated through the generations of the Blackwood family. The weight of the truth bore down on both men. But Jonathan realized that the curse could not be allowed to continue. Summoning every ounce of courage, he resolved to break the cycle of violence, even if it meant confronting the malevolent spirits that resided within the dolls. Together, Jonathan and Mr. Blackwood ventured further into the house, seeking a way to break the curse. The dolls' presence grew more oppressive, their silent gazes turning hostile. Shadows danced on the walls, and whispers filled the air, an ethereal symphony of malevolence. In the attic, they discovered a hidden chamber adorned with intricate symbols and arcane writings. Amongst the ancient texts, they found a ritual that promised to sever the bond between the dolls and the Blackwood family. With trembling hands, they enacted the ritual, their voices quivering as they recited the incantations. The air crackled with supernatural energy, and the doll's eerie presence intensified. For a moment it seemed as though the curse would prevail, but then, as if in response to their desperate plea, the porcelain dolls shattered into fragments. A resounding silence enveloped the room, and the oppressive atmosphere dissipated. The curse had been broken. Jonathan and Mr. Blackwood breathed a sigh of relief, their souls scarred but free from the clutches of darkness. As they left the accursed house behind, the weight of the horrors they had witnessed lingered, etching itself into their memories forever. In the aftermath, Jonathan vowed to use his newfound knowledge to uncover the truth and ensure that no other innocent souls would fall victim to the cursed dolls. It would be his life's mission to dismantle this unholy legacy and bring an end to the Blackwood curse. In a quiet suburban town, shrouded in an eerie silence, there resided a man named Eric. Unemployed and desperate for work, he scoured the classifieds, stumbling upon a mysterious ad that caught his attention. It read, "Worker needed. No experience required. Generous compensation. Inquire within." Intrigued by the prospect of quick money, Eric contacted the anonymous poster and arranged a meeting at a derelict warehouse on the outskirts of town. Little did he know that this fateful decision would plunge him into a nightmarish world he could never have imagined. As dusk settled, Eric arrived at the desolate warehouse. Its crumbling facade exuded an air of malevolence, and the flickering streetlights cast eerie shadows that danced upon the cracked pavement. With trepidation coursing through his veins, he pushed open the rusted doors, and the cold embrace of darkness swallowed him whole. Inside, the faint glow of a single flickering bulb illuminated the vast expanse of the warehouse, revealing a scene straight out of his worst nightmares. A hulking figure emerged from the shadows, clad in a tailored suit, his face concealed by a sinister smile. "You're here for the job," the figure rasped, his voice dripping with a mix of authority and malice. "You'll be assisting us with disposal." A tremor of fear coursed through Eric's veins as the realization dawned upon him. The nature of this job was far more sinister than he could have ever anticipated. Before he could protest or flee, the weight of his desperation and financial woes anchored him to the ground, leaving him with no choice but to proceed. The figure led Eric through a labyrinth of dimly lit corridors, their every step punctuated by the unsettling echo of their footfalls. The scent of decay hung heavy in the air, assaulting Eric's senses, as if the very walls whispered tales of the horrors that had transpired within their confines. They arrived at a dimly lit chamber, revealing a macabre tableau of blood-soaked tables, surgical instruments, and thick plastic bags. The stench of death permeated the room, intertwining with Eric's senses, threatening to overwhelm him. The realization crashed over him like a tidal wave. This was a place of unspeakable violence, a haven for the ruthless and the damned. The figure, now revealed to be a high-ranking member of the Mafia, regarded Eric with cold, calculating eyes. "Your job," he stated with chilling finality, "is to dispose of the bodies that pose a threat to our organization." Paralyzed by fear, Eric struggled to comprehend the gravity of the situation. The line between right and wrong had blurred, his own survival entangled with the monstrous machinations of the criminal underworld. Night after night, Eric became a pawn in a twisted game, forced to confront the grim reality of his actions. The weight of guilt and horror settled upon his shoulders, threatening to shatter his fragile sanity. His dreams were plagued by the tortured whispers of the deceased, their anguished voices pleading for justice. As the days turned into weeks, Eric's conscience waged war against the darkness that consumed him. He knew he could not escape the clutches of the Mafia unscathed. but a flicker of hope burned within him. A desperate longing for redemption, for a chance to break free from this malevolent existence. With newfound determination, Eric began to meticulously gather information, names, connections, and evidence, hoping to expose the criminal organization to the authorities. He risked his life, venturing into the shadows to gather pieces of the puzzle that could ultimately dismantle the very foundation of the Mafia's operation. Every step he took was fraught with danger, as the Mafia's watchful eyes followed his every move. Paranoia seeped into his bones, the fear of being discovered driving him to the brink of madness. But Eric pressed on, his will to bring justice overpowering the terror that threatened to consume him. Late one moonlit night, armed with a bundle of evidence, Eric made his way to the local police station, his heart pounding in his chest. He cautiously revealed his story to a detective, a weary guardian of the law burdened by the weight of the criminal underworld. To Eric's relief, the detective listened intently, recognizing the potential to strike a severe blow against the Mafia's stranglehold on the town. Under the protective custody of the police, Eric's life teetered on a precipice, suspended between the shadows of his past and the promise of a new beginning. The wheels of justice began to turn, investigations launched, and arrests made. The dominoes fell, one by one, as the Mafia's empire crumbled under the weight of its own wickedness. But the victory did not come without a cost. Eric became a marked man, a target for the remnants of the organization he had betrayed. He lived in constant fear, his nights haunted by the chilling whispers of retribution. Yet even in the face of imminent danger, Eric refused to cower. He had unearthed the truth, walked through the fires of darkness, and emerged scarred, but determined to build a life free from the clutches of evil. Years passed, and the town gradually healed from the scars inflicted upon it. Eric, having relocated to a new city under a new identity, embarked on a journey of redemption, dedicating himself to helping victims of crime and advocating for justice. His nights were no longer filled with torment. Instead, they were filled with the quiet solace of knowing that he had fought the darkness and emerged as a symbol of resilience. Eric's tale became a whispered legend, a reminder of the terrifying forces that lurked beneath the surface of society, waiting to ensnare the unsuspecting.